Welcome to Growth Matters, Business Insights and Tech Trends. My name is Justice. We talk about business, technology, and current affairs. So enjoy, sit back, and relax. It's you and me having a timely conversation. Here we go. Today, our show's topic is engaging women in political arena. Our guest today is United States State Representative for Massachusetts, 12th Suffolk County, Brandy Fluker-Oakley. Brandy is a second-term state representative for the 12th Suffolk District. She serves as the House co-chair of the Ellen Story Commission on Postpartum Depression, vice chair of Racial Equity, Civil Rights, and Inclusion Committee, and is a member of the Judiciary Committee. Also, she serves as the Women's Caucus Executive Board as treasurer and is engaged as a member of the Mass Black and Latino Legislative Caucus. Welcome, Representative Fluker-Oakley, to our podcast. Thank you for being here today.
Justice, thank you so much for having me.
Yes. Would you please share a little bit about your background, because we're celebrating here in Women's History Month?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So I am a Boston native, though my mom is from Alabama. So she would always send me down to my grandparents' farm every summer until I was 12 years old. And I feel like I had a very privileged experience experiencing the Northeast and the Deep South, and just seeing many of the different policies that were at play, particularly for Black and Brown communities. And when I first entered high school, my headmaster said, "Look to your left, look to your right. I guarantee that person won't be here by the time you graduate." And I was seated next to two Latina females, neither of whom graduated Boston Latin School with me. And as I went throughout the years, our class just kept getting less diverse and lost a lot of Black and Brown students. And no one was really talking about it, which kind of fueled my fire to fight for our public education system and make sure that students have the best quality access that they can, which is what I did after graduating from Syracuse University. And I did that work by teaching third grade in Baltimore City. Then also I went to law school at Emory, where I also became a public defender back here in the city of Boston before transitioning to advocacy for our students and then ultimately running for office.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. The Massachusetts Women's Political Caucus, they seek to civically engage women in the political process through events, programming, and workshops. Could you speak a little bit about that, since you're part of that?
MAWPC is a great statewide organization that does exactly what you named, which tries to make sure that there are more women engaged in politics. And I know folks might be wondering, well, why does it matter if women are engaged in politics? In fact, some studies show that it takes a woman 9 times to be asked to run for office before she says yes. Part of that is given the imposter syndrome. Part of the fact is that, seeing is believing. And when we look so often historically at our government, when we think about the folks who have positions of power in elected office, overwhelmingly identify as white men. Even here in the state house, where we have a legislative body of 200 members, 31% of those members identify as women. And it just goes to show you that despite women making up the majority of the population, we still aren't necessarily represented in those halls and seats of power, which is why the work that the MAWPC does is so important, to really make sure that more women are engaged at all different levels in terms of the political process. And even if they're not running for office themselves, are supporting other candidates and getting involved in issues that matter to women.
Great. So what programs does MAWPC offer to increase that interest of women in the political process?
Yeah, so MAWPC offers a variety of programs. I do not serve on their board, and I have been supported by them in my elective runs. So they have an internship program that is available for folks to serve as a political analyst and learn more about aspects of public policy in that regard. They also have opportunities where folks can serve in intern capacity with operations, marketing, and communications as well. They also have FAQs on how to run for office, and they have campaign checklists and candidate requirements, so that way folks who want to run for office can get the resources they need in order to do so. They also offer endorsements of political candidates who align to their values, and they support folks in that way as well. And then they host a series of events throughout the year. Obviously, they have their annual meeting every year, but they also have a lunch and learn. They have an emerging speaker series. They have a masterclass series. So that way women can engage with other women who are interested in the political process.
Great. Now, as you're serving your second term, is there any things from your reflections that you would share with new inspiring women looking to get engaged in the process, maybe run for political office, and just some lessons learned since you're serving your second term?
Oh my gosh. There's so many lessons learned. I don't think there's enough time, Justice, to go through all of them, which is one of the best things about this job is I literally learn something new every single day, which truly is a blessing. Mm-hmm. I would say for anybody who's looking to get into elected office, especially those who identify as women, is it all starts with service. I know there are some folks who might be in it for their own ego, but really it all starts with the heart of service and how can I make my community better and provide impact. So even if you don't run for office, try to find a way to serve somehow that represents your skills and interests in your local community. I would also say talk to other women or even just mentors. I had the opportunity, Justice, to speak to the Women's Bar Association, which is Massachusetts Association for all lawyers who are women. Mm-hmm. And I was sharing with them how, male mentors matter as well. So talk to your mentors, seek their perspective. So often when I think about many of the jobs I have held over the years, including running for office, it was because someone saw it in me, not necessarily because I saw it in myself. And I remember getting a call from a colleague who identifies as a white male who said, you should really think about running for this seat, which it hadn't crossed my mind. And so I would just encourage anyone who's thinking about running for office, talk to your trusted advisors, let them know about your interests. They've seen you in action, so they can kind of let you know if they think you have what it takes or if that you would show up in the best way to represent your community. And then I would also just say, build your network. So much of running for office is really about not just who you know, but who you're connected to. And my mom always jokes with me. She's like, Brandy, you will make a new best friend anywhere. Because she'll say how we'll be traveling together. And let's say if our seats aren't next to one another on the plane, next thing you know, my neighbor and I are best friends walking off the plane because somehow we just struck up a conversation. Now, those are the times when I actually want to engage in conversation. I know everyone needs their me time from time to time, but just building your network and making those people connections can go a really long way.
So you got to have really communication skills, be outgoing, extrovert, would you say?
Well, you know what's so funny is I'm actually what they call it, an ambivert, an extrovert, an introverted, extrovert. I truly lean introverted, but I know that our society values being extroverted, so I push myself to do that, but it's not my preference. So yes, I'd say try to be extroverted, but most importantly, just step outside your comfort zone.
Mm. Yeah, because now in doing that, stepping outside your comfort zone, I mean, you've been a teacher, advocate, public defender. What other passions you had that really helped you move forward in running for political office?
Yeah, so I think what was also helpful for me in running for a political office was the passion that I have for my community. So I grew up in Mattapan. I bought my first home in 2020, and it is still in Mattapan. My mom is here in Mattapan, and she was an entrepreneur herself. And so she would hold her office all throughout the 12 Suffolk. So being her only child, after school, I'd have to go to her office, whether it was in what was then called the C-Butts Realtor building on Washington Street, whether it was when she had an office down on Talbot Ave, right near Ashmont, whether when she had her office at 67 River Street, and whether she had it at 14 Gallivan Boulevard. And I'm sharing all of this because every single one of those locations is in my district. So to think that the places that, I would have to show up to after school to do my homework, and be with my mom are now actually communities that I'm responsible for and supporting and serving feels so surreal and truly full circle. So I think having a passion for the community that you serve really makes a difference, as well as really being able to try to solve problems. it is so easy to talk about all the things that are wrong in this world. And God knows there are many that could be better and should be better. But when it comes to making policy and being in elected office, you have to try to find the light somewhere. You have to try to find a way to move forward policies and solutions that will make things better. And to be perfectly honest, and no one likes this, we don't get 100% of what we want, right? Like, even as a little kid, my mom told me you can't have everything you want. The same is also true while we're trying to make policy. So having a spirit of compromise also makes a difference as well.
Now, am I correct? You did a bill, an act improving the rail service for the Fairmont Community Rail Line, because that is in your district. Am I correct?
Yes, it is. And yes, you are correct.
Could you share a little bit about that, and what was the things you're trying to improve, as adding more trains, more frequency?
Absolutely. And it's all of the above, Justice. So the Fairmont line, as you know, is a commuter rail line of the MBTA. And the commuter rails, what makes them different from the red line or the blue line, orange line, any of the other lines, is the fact that they're actually diesel trains. Which, when we think about fossil fuels, we're trying to step away from those pollutants in our community. And why this bill matters so much is multifold. First off, the Boston Public Health Commission recently released data that said that Mattapan has the highest asthma rates of any other town or community within the city of Boston. And I'm thinking to myself, of course we do, because we have a diesel train that runs through our community every 45 minutes, just polluting it, and we're breathing in that air. So if we were to electrify the Fairmont line, then we wouldn't have all of those emissions and negative toxins from the fossil fuel of diesel. So that would be a huge game changer when we think about our environment and our own physical health. The other reason why it matters is, so I live closest to the Blue Hill Ave stop on the Fairmont line. And when I catch the commuter rail, it gets me to South Station in 20 minutes, door to door. I kid you not. It is like a dream, especially when we think about how bad traffic has gotten in Boston within the recent years. And when we think about how sometimes the T has known to be unreliable for folks, knowing that there's actually a train that runs door to door from the heart of Boston, which I'm calling Mattapan because that's where I'm from, all the way downtown to South Station in 20 minutes, is a game changer when we think about economic opportunity, when we think about making sure that folks can also experience the small businesses and restaurants that we have here in the most southern part of the city as well. So it creates more economic opportunity as well, and more better access to jobs, services, and for businesses. And again, like I said, it reduces our carbon footprint and helps to reduce significant air pollution. And why this matters is over 80% of the residents who live along the Fairmont line identify as people of color. And traditionally, Black and Latinx communities, like the ones that I represent along the Fairmont line, are disproportionately impacted by pollution, and electrification will help to improve the living conditions as well.
Oh, that's great. That is so great. What are some of the other bills that you're pushing around transportation and to try to make it more equitable and help have our people get in town and out of town for jobs and come in to the city? Any other things you're working on?
That's the only transportation bill that I am specifically working on, but I think what you're touching upon related to jobs in particular reminds me of a few organizations that I've had the opportunity to partner with in my role as an elected official. I know, Justice, you and I have talked about the fact that I am one of 4 Black women out of 200 in the entire legislature here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And as such, we often get invited to speak and engage with other organizations that are doing amazing things for women. So, for example, there is a Center for Women in Enterprise organization, which helps women launch and grow their businesses by connecting them with the resources they need to succeed. I've been able to successfully partner with them. There's also the Center for Women in Business, which is located at Bentley University. Their business program is world-renowned and is specifically dedicated to centering the voices of leaders from historically excluded communities to empower them through innovative opportunities and entrepreneurship, which I think is really cool. And there's also BECMA, which is the Black Economic Council of Massachusetts. I've been able to help them secure funding in our state's budget in order to be responsive to the needs of Black business owners here in Massachusetts. And also there is an organization by the name of, I think it's Sustainable Sustainable Business Network, which is specifically dedicated to supporting minority-owned businesses here in the Commonwealth. And I know you mentioned transportation, but the truth of the matter is, Justice, all of these issues are interconnected, right?
Yes.
So if we're having transportation, it's because we got to get to jobs, right? Or we got to get to and from our homes. If we are paying rent or owning a home, we have to have a job in order to access that. So
that's right.
Even though I didn't mention transportation, I just wanted to uplift all of these organizations. And since it still is Women's History Month for the next 3 days, just wanted to uplift all the organizations that are doing so much work around women economic empowerment and development. And I was proud to sponsor a bill to promote wage transparency, because even today, right now in 2024 in Massachusetts, a white woman makes 71 cents to every dollar that a white man makes. A Black woman makes 62 cents to every dollar that a white man makes, and a Latino woman makes 57 cents to every dollar that a white man makes. So trying to put the salary ranges on job descriptions is really helpful, especially because women and often people of color don't have the agency to advocate for higher pay, and knowing that salary range can make them more inclined to negotiate as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge factor, because, I mean, just talk, as you said yourself, you was able to purchase your home in 2020, but if you're only making 67 cents on the dollar or 50, right, that makes it a little more harder to come up with a down payment and the other things you need to do to become a homeowner. Yep. So that is really,
absolutely,
yes. So how's that bill coming with the transparency? Is it any more movement towards that?
There has been great movement this legislative session. So actually, the House brought it to a vote on the floor, and it passed in the House, and it also passed in the Senate, though the House and the Senate passed different versions of the bill. And so when that happens, which is pretty often, the bill will go to conference committee, where we kind of try to iron out the differences and come to a version that both chambers can agree upon. And then it'll come back to each of the floors of the House and the Senate before going to the governor's desk. So right now that bill is in conference committee, which is a huge win. And we're just trying to iron out the details. And I'm proud to sit and serve on the conference committee as well, and trying to get this bill to the finish line.
Oh, great. So hopefully by the year end, it should be all done. It'll be a done deal.
Yes. And man, from your lips to God's ears, our legislative session ends July 31st. So that is the goal and the deadline that we're marching towards.
Oh, great. Great. That is excellent. Any other projects you want to share that you're doing, during Women's History Month, that you're promoting and helping women get into this political arena? And please share.
Sure, I'd be happy to. One bill that I would like to talk about specifically relates to birthing justice. Many people don't know this, but Black women, all things being equal, so same height, same weight, same health, same educational attainment, same salary, same social status compared to a white woman, are still 3 to 4 times more likely to die in childbirth than their white counterparts. And there has been so much research done on this issue, which suggests that if someone who is Black is giving birth, they are better likely to survive the birthing process, as is their child, if they have a midwife as part of the process. It's so funny, Justice, as many people, when this bill was moving through the State House, they were like, oh my gosh, midwives, how can people not be born in hospitals? And I had to share, well, my mom, being from the segregated South, we didn't have access to the hospital. So she is the youngest of 5 children, all of which that my grandmother gave birth to in her home with a midwife because there was no hospital access. And I'm proud to report that 4 out of the 5 children did survive. One passed away after 3 days. And I share how my grandmother gave birth to my mom when she was 41 and turned 42 literally 1 month later. So just to think about those health outcomes and the success of that birthing process, even giving her age, and that there was a midwife there. So what we are trying to do at the State House is to make sure that we have decreased rates of maternal deaths, infant deaths, premature births, C-sections, and postpartum complications by ensuring that women, particularly Black women, have access to a midwife. Part of the challenge is midwives aren't certified here in Massachusetts. So you have people who will like call themselves a midwife, but they really just charge exorbitant fees and aren't necessarily doing the science behind midwifery.
Mm-hmm.
And so what this bill would do is make sure that folks are actually certified, and then also allow Mass Health to cover those midwives, so that way we can improve the birthing outcomes for Black and brown people and their babies in particular.
Is the postpartum depression, is that increasing as time with, we've just been through a pandemic? I mean, is there any statistics around that? Have you heard any research?
That is such a great question. I don't know that off the top of my head. I can infer that it's definitely possible given all of the stressors that we as a society have went through, particularly through the pandemic, and certainly given the way our society is set up, very often the role of caregiving, whether for small children or elderly parents, falls to the woman in the family. So I wouldn't be surprised if that has been happening. I just don't have the data for you at this moment. But I did also file a bill related to postpartum depression, and specifically making sure that we provide grants to to community organizations that are already providing those services, and that we diversify the workforce of folks who provide mental health counseling for folks who are experiencing postpartum depression and perinatal mood associated disorders. And I'll just briefly share this story. I have a constituent, she's on the Madison Hyde Park line, who gave birth a few years ago, was experiencing some, postpartum depression as a result. The closest circle, which is the counseling that they recommend for postpartum depression, was all the way in Walpole.
Wow.
So she had to commute from the Madison Hyde Park line to Walpole to get the services she needed. And as I'm sure you can imagine, she was the only melanated mom in the group, and she was grateful for the group, but also there are different struggles, different experiences, etc., that just weren't reflected in there. So hopefully, if we can get this bill is out of committee favorably, it's just a matter of getting it written into law. If we can get this off the ground, we can have more of those trained counseling circles throughout the Commonwealth, but particularly more that serve folks who identify as Black and brown, so they can get the support and resources they need.
Yeah, because I remember reading probably actually sometime last year, how they were speaking about if you have clinicians and pediatricians and physicians that look like you, as far as Black and brown, your health was much better. Because they can connect with you and things of that nature, that longer life, better living. And that was real interesting to see. And I think that would be, as you just mentioned in your example, having that someone closer. You don't have to travel almost an hour from Mattapan to Walpole to get the services you need. That's very interesting. And that was the closest one that was around. Wow. But what if that's a transportation issue though. I mean, okay, how you get there if you didn't have someone to take you, or you couldn't drive yourself? If
you don't have a car, that's right. Yeah, that's a whole other can of worms. And I was actually sharing a related story. So my colleague Rep Consalvo, he has most of Hyde Park. I have some of Hyde Park, and Rep Russell Holmes also has a portion of Hyde Park. And Rep Consalvo filed a bill around transit equity, particularly even on the Fairmont line and other commuter rail lines, because when you get to the part of Hyde Park that is Reedville, which is where he represents, the fare actually increases because it's a little further from the city limit. And he has been advocating for fare equity to make it the same price. And I am on the transportation committee, and when he, along with the mayor and a couple of other colleagues, testified before the committee earlier this year, I just shared the story of how I had to get a job because my mom made sure the day I qualified for a work permit to get one at my guidance counselor's office and get a job, and how all the jobs in retail in downtown Boston basically were full. And so I ended up finding a job at the Sears in the Natick Mall, and there was a commuter rail stop out there. But literally the monthly pass for that commuter rail at that time was probably like $242 or something exorbitant like that. That basically by the time I commuted out to Natick, worked my shifts at Sears and back, all my paycheck was gone because I had spent it on my train fare. And I just talked about how when we think about transportation access, it's also for our students and others who are trying to be employed and may not have access to a car, but want to make sure that they are doing something productive with their lives or trying to find a way to help out and support their families. And if we're not more strategic about our solutions to transit, then we're also going to have some problems down the line.
Yeah, but I mean, think about that. I mean, your commute, getting from Mattapan to probably South Station to get the train to Natick, Framingham line. So
you already know. Yep.
So that's some little navigation.
2 hours.
Yeah.
2 hours to and from. Right.
I mean, that's,
exactly right.
I mean, the commuter rail, it's a little different than the red line. You can maybe take a little nap, the seats might sit a little differently, but still that's a lot of wear and tear on your body going out 2 hours out, 2 hours back.
That's right. That's exactly right. I'm sure it's no surprise that I ultimately had to quit that job. It just wasn't sustainable long term. But I did find a gig at the Filene's in South Shore Plaza. Back then it was just the Braintree Mall, but now it's South Shore Plaza.
Yeah.
And since I went to Latin school, I would walk to Huntington Ave, catch the E-trolley to Park Street, catch the Braintree train, and I'd find an end seat that had like the window looking at the next car to do my homework and ride the train from Park Street to Braintree and then catch the bus to the mall. And then at the end of my shift, my mom would pick me up from the mall and take me back home. So still a commute, but I finally found a slightly more convenient option.
Yeah, great. Any last thoughts to encourage our listeners to continue to be engaged politically in the political arena by volunteering or running for office? Any last thoughts you want to share before we wrap it up today?
Final last thoughts, Justice. I'll just say, if you see something, say something. All of our elected officials or your elected officials are accountable to you. And so if you have an idea, if you're facing a challenge or issue, I don't think I've realized how much our state elected officials and city elected officials and federal elected officials can help us as citizens with individual issues until I got into this role. So, for example, if you're having an issue with unemployment or anything at the state level, reach out to your state rep or state senator. If you have an idea of something that might make your life better or help the community thrive, share those ideas with your elected officials as potential policy solutions, and really view it as a partnership. But at the end of the day, y'all give us our jobs, and so we are accountable to what you would like, for sure.
Great.
So I just say speak up.
Okay. All right. Speak up. We got to use that phrase. Speak up. Well, thank you so much, State Representative Fluker-Oakley, for being up on my podcast guest today. And we look forward to continuing this essential conversation of engaging women in the political arena. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I love recording it. You know what to do. Like, comment, subscribe, and share it with the wider community. Until next time, check out our past episode. I'll see you at the next one. Peace. I am your host, Justice.